You are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with John, Kellen, and TJ. And I think 2024 has been a pretty solid year for horror movies so far. And I think leading the pack is Mr. Ti West. Ti West has given us X, he's given us Pearl, and now he's given us Maxine. He finishes his trilogy, and Les and John have talked on the side, like maybe he's going to make another one. It's possible, don't know. I'm here for it if he does. I would say that Maxine, out of all the horror movies this year, is probably one of the most anticipated. I think that and the one with the minion killing people in a violent nature, I think those were probably the two that were leading the charge, and now Nosferatu's coming down the gate. But with that level of hype, disappointment can sneak through the cracks. But did it fall flat for us? Let's find out. So if you're unfamiliar, first of all, spoilers as always. This is a new movie. It is available for streaming, but we are going to spoil because that's just all we know how to do. If you're unfamiliar with the movie, it takes place in Hollywood in the 1980s. Adult film star and aspiring actress Maxine Minx finally gets her big break. However, a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Los Angeles. A trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past.
Yeah, I was very, very excited about this movie. Just, when it was coming out, when the series first started with X, I was kind of, I guess, a bit apprehensive about it because when I first saw the trailer for X, I just thought there wasn't anything about it. I mean, it looked okay, but there were just parts of it that I just thought wouldn't work. And Ti West just hadn't done a film in so long, but X was a really solid movie. I like it.
And better than Texas Chainsaw Massacre if you're keeping score.
I know. According to some people, Mr.
Would
Kellen,
say such blasphemy.
But yeah, X is a good movie. Pearl, I really loved. And this movie, Ti West has just kind of stepped up his skills over the years. He started out great with one of the first movies I ever saw of his was House of the Devil, which I think is a really, really good film. He did
Creepy Tom Noonan.
Yeah, I know. That was such a good casting thing, getting Tom Noonan back for that. And he's really just, I'm very impressed by how he's changed and progressed as a filmmaker. And also just the fact that he came back. Ti West was kind of gone for a long time, and he's kind of come back and really been, a force to deal with in horror films. This movie is definitely not for everybody. I think a lot of people go into this thinking that you're going to get X all over again. It's not really like that at all. It's not really like Pearl. And I kind of respect that he does a different thing with every movie. With this one, you're immediately right into the 1980s. They're hitting you with opening titles. It's got the music. You're hearing ZZ Top. It's doing the newsreel. So you really feel like you're there, like the Night Stalker stuff they're talking about, all the things going on in the news, the music censorship. It all kind of makes you feel like you're in this time period. And what I really dug about it was this movie didn't feel like another movie. It felt like a movie that was set in the 80s, but it didn't feel derivative of something else. Like, I didn't watch this thinking, oh, this is like a ripoff of Angel or Body Double. I just thought this is like a really cool, like, period piece, thriller, right? And it is slow burn. There's a lot of people complain about the movie being kind of slow in spots. But I think the character development, the acting, I think is all really, really solid, But yeah, I really was into this. I like the kind of the giallo vibes of the killer who, spoiler, okay, this is a spoiler, you find out at the end of the movie is the dad. And it's the same actor from the first movie in the TV, when he's on the TV show talking about Maxine.
Yeah, if you don't
But-
remember that, it was at the end of the film. I don't know if I don't remember if it was in the beginning or not, but at the end of the film, when the cop's there, he's the evangelist that's on the television, and as she drives off, he's on the radio. So we don't know that that's her dad in X, right?
So, well, you don't know at the beginning. The very end, you figure it out when it zooms in on like a teenage Maxine. You put it together, but it's not like
I
an
think they say
obvious
her
thing.
name at the very end.
They
Yeah.
do.
And now that you say that, I think you're right too. Yeah, he says my little Maxine or something along those lines.
So it's interesting because that actor was in X, is that preacher, and they did so well shooting that you didn't think it almost looked like a real black and white, church program in the 70s, right? So you didn't even realize that, oh, that's this actor playing this guy. And then like he comes back later on in Maxine, and it's revealed that he is in fact the person behind all this chaos, right? He's using the Night Stalker murders to kind of kill these other people in a way to get Maxine to come to him. Basically, he's killing people around her. I like the reveal of the movie. I thought that was pretty cool. A lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people felt that was a letdown. But I thought that was kind of a cool tie-in, right? It made the most sense with the story and the way they went with it. I think everybody's awesome in this movie. Kevin Bacon's character is fucking hilarious. I just love his like New Orleans shtick he's doing. Giancarlo Esposito's awesome. I think he literally can do absolutely anything. Like you put a wig on this guy, and I'm thinking this dude's like a talent manager in the 80s. Like I totally bought it. I wasn't even questioning it. I just forgot that it's Giancarlo Esposito. It's like, oh, this dude, he just totally, sells such a small role, all the kills are great. I think, they're gratuitous. They're kind of over the top. They're kind of ridiculous. The kill of the video store clerk, her friend, that was pretty brutal, honestly. Like even from the start when he like slits the guy in the back of the neck, it's like holy shit, they were really going for it with that. A lot of people, I think I see them compare Maxine and Pearl like they're the same, and I don't really think that at all. I think Pearl comes across as a character in her movies where she's really desperate for love and attention, right? She wants that approval because she has the mom who is like cold and her dad is like disabled. So she's always wanting that love and attention, right? And she'll go to any lengths to do it. And there's obviously a high level of mental instability. Maxine, on the other hand, comes across to me as actually a little bit more of a naturally more ruthless person because she wants fame. She wants fame. She feels like it's her divine way, like her dad taught her, right? That she's, nothing can get in her way. It's like her right to be famous. And it feels like she'll do anything to get there. Even the end of the movie, when it's all over, the director of the Puritan 2, the movie they're making at the end of the movie, she's like, what do you want to do next? And she's like, I don't want this to ever end. And that's kind of an interesting setup because I wonder where, if they make a fourth film, it would be really cool. Like if Maxine was older. So like if it was set maybe closer to modern day, you have an older Maxine.
It could be like the Sunset Boulevard version.
Exactly. And it could be, and I think it would be interesting if they flipped it where you have a situation like X where there's someone's getting killed, but maybe in that one, Maxine could actually like help them. Like in a weird way, she could do what Pearl didn't do, right? She could be the opposite of that.
Or she could turn into Pearl because it does all go away because of her age.
Yeah, the thing is like, I feel like that would be too obvious, right? Like I would like to see them sort of twist it at the end. Like basically she has to make a choice other than Pearl. Like it's almost like that circle. I mean, I could see her being a killer, but
maybe she gets really mad about all these young people with their fancy eyebrows and the fact that she doesn't have any anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do think that the negative of the film, one of the negatives is there's really no character progression for her. She is who she is at the beginning of the movie. At the beginning of the movie, she thinks she's a star. And at the end of the movie, she's basically proven to herself, I'll do anything to be a star. And this is mine. No one's taking this away from me. And I think it's, you know, it's just, that's the one thing I would say. I hope Ti West is able to hit that fourth film, because I feel like there's something there. He can do more with that, you know? And I know he's brought it up. Will he actually do it? You know, it's hard to say. You know, the movie is not perfect by any means. The soundtrack is awesome, like one of the best soundtracks of the past 5 years. Love it. Love all the music. The cinematography is great. There's things that happen in the movie that don't make sense, like when Maxine, you know, shoots her dad at the end and she's not arrested. It's like, how did she get away with that? Because they're watching her. Or like, you remember the scene where the dad puts the bag over her head and like knocks her out? Like when I first watched that, I was like, well, is he killing her? Because that can kill you, right? So there's little things like that in the movie that it's a movie, right? You're gonna find flaws. But you know, I love all the setups with the Universal backlot, the Back to the Future set. You can see the clock tower during the chase scene where it's Maxine and Labat. The Psycho House. I thought that was so good to use the Psycho House in this movie. And I know that Ti West had to reach out to the Hitchcock estate to use that, and they approved of it. But I just thought things like that just make the movie feel so much more like real and visceral of that world. So yeah, I mean, it's a win for me. I really, really loved it. So I'm curious which of you guys didn't.
So I don't know why Jay started to smile when I started to talk. I didn't mind this movie. I'm definitely not going to fawn over it as much as John. I will start on a super positive note. So ZZ Top, Rat, Judas Priest, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, New Order, Kim Carnes. Like John said, this soundtrack is fantastic. This is such a great homage to the 80s. Even the callbacks in some of the movie sets.
It had to be
even
like
having
half
Kevin
the
Bacon
budget,
in it.
right? Just all those big bands and songs.
I mean, clips of them. It can't cost too much. I mean, Grand Theft Auto 4,
Wow.
the cars that you would drive had clips from songs in it. So I can't imagine it was too expensive, but I'm sure they definitely set aside some money for that, for the music budget. But it's worth it, because nothing pulls you into a movie, especially a period movie, than music from the period. It'd be weird if this movie was just a soundtrack like Pearl, where it's just kind of like that Gone with the Wind, big grand kind of orchestral soundtrack. It would have taken away from this movie. So actually having some recognizable 80s voices playing in the background in certain scenes, absolutely brilliant, and was just made the movie more fun. The part that I kind of wish they would have picked up more on is the neon of the 80s. And that's not, we all grew up in the 80s, you know, the cheap plastic covering the couches, the floral patterns everywhere. It wasn't as neon and tracksuits as movies make it out to be, but that's what we've come to expect in cinema. When somebody goes to the 80s, is we're expecting more bright neon colors and big hair and things like that. And that wasn't really ever apparent in this movie. To be kind of like an 80s slasher type film, it felt like they kind of toned down the 80s, which didn't make sense from the perspective of watching all three films, Pearl, X, and then this, where they really leaned heavily into the genre that they were making an homage to. Obviously the 70s, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre look that they did with X. In Pearl, it was more of that, you know, 30s 40s style. Even the way the acting was portrayed, they really leaned into it. And this one, it didn't feel like they leaned as much into the 80s as they could, outside of the soundtrack, outside of a couple of neon signs here and there. And then Giancarlo Esposito being, like John said, the quintessential 80s entertainment lawyer. He looked exactly like the part that you would expect. And he can do no wrong. He's ever since Breaking Bad, he has been phenomenal in everything that you see him in. even the movie that I shit on, Abigail, he was still great in that. I think he was
Do the Right
underutilized.
Thing. I just watched Do the Right Thing this week too, so I technically had a Esposito double feature with this and Maxine. He was fantastic in that too.
Yeah, he's just always great. And what's interesting is that he doesn't play too much outside of his wheelhouse, the way that he presents his lines and things like that. But you buy into everything that he plays because of the way he delivers with so much understated charisma. Like it's like the inverse of Matthew McConaughey, right? Matthew McConaughey is like in your face with charisma, and he's more toned down, but still so charismatic. He's like um, a politician that you just can't help but listen to, because he's so well spoken. The way he talks, the way he presents himself, you're just drawn into him. So that was great. Mia Goth, I mean, she's great. I don't think she gets much past horror genre or maybe some dramatic scenes. I think she's not typecast herself. I think she is that. That's just kind of her look, her appeal, which is, unfortunate because she is such a great actress. She's been fantastic in all three of these films. A real joy to watch. But I don't see, she doesn't have that look of being like a big star, which is what she's portraying. And I'm not trying to be mean to her. Like I said, she's a phenomenal actress. It's just people get typecast like that. Look, the guy that played the cop, I can't remember what his name is, but damn if he hasn't played a cop in like 40 different movies or TV shows. Like that guy always seems to default.
Oh yeah,
being,
Bobby
Cannavale. Yeah, I used to hate him, but he's recently won me over with some of the.
He's always some kind of detective, some kind of cop, some kind of private investigator, something like that in that role, like typecast in that.
He was good in that weird show. There was like a limited series where Nicole Kidman like runs a weird like camp or something, retreat camp.
Non-Perfect Strangers.
Yeah, he's really good in that.
Well, I mean, he's never bad, but he plays that same character almost all the time. Like John said, the Bates Motel showing up, and then the Bates house in the background. That was just a fun little nod to the almost the beginning of the slasher genre. If you want to go back that far, that kind of like set the stage for the possibility of future slasher films. Kevin Bacon was a treat. Oh my god, he's over the top, sleazy New Orleans style detective or private investigator. He was great. I adore Kevin Bacon. I follow him on Instagram. Him and his wife are adorable. Kira Sedgwick. They're just he always just brings something special to anything that he does, and to have this kind of role later in his career where he's obviously not the star of the film, he's a B-list cast member, maybe lower down on the call sheet, but he still gives it his Kevin Baconist. It's just so much fun to watch. Even the scene when he's in the car compactor, and they've built up him being an atheist, and he starts saying the Lord's Prayer while he's getting crushed to death. Yeah, he was so much fun to watch. John also touched on this. The guy getting the back of his neck cut, like we always see people getting the front of their neck slashed. That was brutal. That was surprisingly brutal. As subtle as it was, and I say that because I've got going to mention something else that we've all cringed at in this movie. But the neck thing kind of just like came out of nowhere to me, and I was like, why did he do the back of his neck? That would be so alarming if that just happened to you. Like I wouldn't even be able to fight back. I would just freeze right then and be like, oh my god, what just happened? The part, and here's where the movie kind of starts to lose me a little bit. Some of the stuff just doesn't make sense. Again, John touched on that, but when they're wheeling out her boyfriend, lover, whatever you want to call him, and the cop looks at Maxine and she's like, you see this? I mean, that's basically the look no cop's ever gonna do that. Like, find another way. They've done it in other movies where an arm falls out and you see a bracelet and you're like, oh my god, and they know, or maybe it gets caught on the wheel and it pulls it back but not the cop just like bold face staring directly at her and like, is this what you want to keep happening? You're gonna play ball? I was like, that's so insane. There's not a cop in the world that would ever do that. So that's one of those scenes, like, and I talked about it before, where it just kind of pulls you out of the the scene that you're in. It pulls you out of the movie because like, for a second you're just like, wait a minute. Same thing with the dad putting the bag over her. Rip the bag. What? It's a plastic bag. Rip the bag. Rip the bag. I don't know why nobody ever. She's grabbing his arm and then she just holds onto his arm for dear life. at no point did she even attempt to claw the bag. Like she just accepted it. She's like, oh well, this is it. You're gonna fight to be an actress, and you're not gonna fight to breathe. Like, rip the bag. I don't understand. That's another one that maybe a pet peeve of just me watching movies like this, because it happens so often. I mean, they've even had like grocery bags they put over people's heads in movie, and I'm like, that thing has holes in it already. Like, how is that even remotely a good way to choke somebody to death? The last thing that I'll mention that just makes absolutely no sense, all of these minions of this guy have shotguns under their robes. They just happen to have random shotguns that they were just ready to blast people with when they're doing this whole service. Like, the shootout made absolutely no sense. Like, if they had some kind of like knives, maybe then, but the guy was just like and just starts like, they just all happen to have sawed off shotguns. Me and Jay kind of talked about this before I finished watching it. He was just mentioning how the last third of the movie was kind of a little bit meh, and that was one of the things where I was just like, did they kind of lose track of where they were going? Like, could they not really think of a better way to end the movie? I feel like for me, it would have made more sense if you do the kind of slasher thing where she's in the house with her dad and he does try to kill her with the bag and she somehow gets away, and then it's him stalking her through the house, and then the cops show up, and then you have the minions that are kind of in the way trying to prevent them from getting to her, and while the dad's trying to make her a star or whatever. I do think that was a nice callback, she to the, this is what you deserve, and he basically fulfilled that dream for her, right? Like, he doing his killing spree fulfills that goal of her becoming this huge name, because nothing's going to push you more than getting in the papers for being part of a serial killer's kill list. So I thought that was kind of a nice tie-in that, the dad was the one coaching her to say that, and then ultimately he did give her her wish. Now to the very negative part, and I mentioned this again to Jay, the testicle scene. That whole scene, the Buster Keaton, she makes him suck on the gun, and then she mashes his balls into the ground and grinds them with her heel. All of the violence they show in the movie, like the two prostitutes, they don't even show them die. They do the etchy VHS, Cinemax in the 90s scramble, and you don't even see what happens to them. You don't really see what happens to the guy because it's mostly dark. Other than the neck slash and the stabbing, it's not super brutal because it's a very dark scene. The shootout at the end, the cop getting shot and bleeding to death, all that's done really dark. And then, oh, here's this guy's testicles. Let's turn the volume up on the lights and show her grind them into the ground. And I told Jay I rewound it so I could see again, just because I was like, was there a hole in his sack? And sure enough, she grinds a hole in his nutsack.
He rewound a couple times. He paused it a couple times. He zoomed in.
I have a poster on the wall.
Purposes.
Of
All
his
for this
nuts.
episode. All for you people listening and watching this now.
I sacrifice
That should be your background,
for
Kellen.
your entertainment. You don't know what my background is, TJ. But my point is scenes like that. Okay, so let me take a step back. When this fella goes absolutely psycho and starts physically abusing someone's body, you're expecting it. That's what that franchise has been built on. Same with Saw. You're expecting a level of violence that's going to make you uncomfortable. Movies like this, where that's not the expectation, it feels like a ploy. It feels like they're trying to do something outrageous with at least one scene. Same thing with Immaculate, with the hand coming out of the vagina. There was another movie we talked about recently, I can't think of off the top of my head, but where they have this one scene where it's over the top violent, over the top gory. I Spit on Your Grave 3, there's a scene where she's giving him in the back alley, and it was one of the guys that messed with her, and she takes a knife and sticks it up through and then rips it in half.
I almost gave you shit earlier when you name dropped I Spit on Your Grave 3. But now that we're all here together, how in the living fuck have you seen that movie
Right.
and not half the other movies we referenced to you?
Right.
He is-
I've
he
only
hasn't
ever
seen
seen the
Possible.
first I Spit on Your Grave.
He hasn't
myself.
seen Dawn of the Dead.
Let's switch gears here. We're just going to judge you for the rest of this episode. Please tell me how this came to fruition that you saw this movie, but you haven't seen Dawn of the Dead.
But please tell
and
me
a
you've seen I
thousand
Spit
other
on Your
movies.
Grave 3, but not the original.
I haven't seen the original.
Christ almighty.
Oh man.
I've seen Green Inferno 5 times. If that helps.
Wow.
What the hell?
Why? Why?
5
But have you
times?
seen Cannibal Holocaust?
Because
No,
the
I
fart
have
scene's so funny?
Huh?
Because the fart scene's so funny in Green Inferno?
Mm.
Sorry, everybody.
Wow.
I'm a disappointment. I'm fine accepting that role on the podcast. I'll get to Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead or something of the Dead. I'll watch one of them at some point in time. I've seen none of them, so that you could fully grasp
Wait,
the
you've
level
seen
of disappointment.
Night of the Living Dead, though, right?
What part of none of them did you not understand?
No.
Oh, Jesus.
No.
Wow.
I haven't even seen the Passion of the Christ, so no Jesus either. So my point is when you have a movie that's not based around gore and violence, it's based more around the acting and the terror, I guess you could say. Having a scene like that makes no sense to me. Like it feels like that was a scene where they were like, how can we provide some shock value to this? The Evil Dead franchise is built on shock value scenes. This whole X, Pearl, now Maxine wasn't built on shock value. It was built on other movies before it, expanding thoughts from those movies. And in this one, you just have this scene that just feels out of place in this movie, especially because you never show her being that much of a badass again, except the part where she comes up and beats Kevin Bacon's face to a pulp. The rest of the time she's running, she's afraid of her dad, she's afraid of she's a little more timid and reserved. So you have a scene where this guy's following in her alley and then she pulls a gun on him and she's a badass, and then you kind of revert back to her being the stereotypical final girl. So I guess for me personally, I'm kind of over that. I'm over that shock value scene where it's going to be ultra violent for one scene in a movie just to give like something to talk about later. I get it when it's in movies like Saw, when it's in movies like Terrifier, when it's in movies like I Spit on Your Grave, where the goal of that movie is to shock you. I don't get it when it's in movies where that's not the goal of the film. They're actually trying to tell a story, and not using it as an excuse to show off somebody who does visual effects skills. So all that to say, I didn't hate this movie. I think it's a little boring at times. I think it, to be a horror film, I think they went more in the direction of Pearl, where it was more about the acting, showing off Mia Goth's talents, than it was about actually developing the story in a more terrifying or gripping way. The movie kind of just drags on at certain points where you're just kind of like, I almost feel like Kevin Bacon was put in there to just kind of spice up some scenes because they didn't really have anything else to do. But other than that, I mean, it's a fine film. I think it's underwhelming for me, especially after watching all three. Honestly, I think it's a fitting ending to the thing. It caps off what started in X very well. Pearl, I think you could throw that whole movie away, and it's a double, but Pearl is a good film. It just doesn't fit in with the three. I mean, it's a prequel in the middle of two films that are tied together. So maybe watch them out of order if you want to watch Pearl first and then X and Maxine. But on the whole, I mean, it's a fine movie. It wasn't anything special. It's not anything that I'm gonna, run and tell people you got to see this movie. If you're like, oh, I'm going to watch Maxine, I'm going to be like, yeah, go for it. if you're like, hey, can you suggest a horror movie from 2024? This is probably not going to be in my top 5. So that's my thoughts.
Okay. So before I get into all of my thoughts, just since Kellen kind of brought this up, so it's still in front of mind, the testicle scene. So I don't think it's just certainly the special effects, the embellishment of it. Yes, it's meant to be a gross out. This is our main gore, centerpiece for this film, right? But I don't think that's the only purpose it serves. I think the central point of that scene is that's really the first moment where you get the sense that, okay, this is still the girl that does all the things in the final act of X, right? Where she's running over people's heads and
But I think
shooting
my point
people.
is you don't have to show that because the very next scene where there's murders involved, they don't show the murders. They just show the end result. I think you can get away without showing a close up of his testicles, and you
I
still get
think
the same effects because most people, most men, especially if you see that he's laying down and his testicles are out, and then she stomps, everyone's going to know what happened. You don't have to then show the after effect of bloody pulp. I
so.
think
That
that's the
was
over the top part.
Well,
that was an homage to an exploitation film. I feel like
I
that's
think
what
it
he was
was an
trying to
homage
do.
to
More,
early
yeah.
80s exploitation, which this is what this film is doing homage to. So that is part of it. But also, I think that was in service of for all the people who just saw this film without having seen X, which I think there's a fair number of people who were just going to see this, who maybe heard word of mouth but didn't see X yet. Maybe they're watching X after they watch Maxine. That happened a lot with the Pearl movie. I watched Pearl before I watched X. Um, so I think that was like, just in case you didn't remember what this girl's capable of doing, she's got this in her, right? This is ultimately what she's willing to do, uh, not only to protect herself, but also to ultimately get the fame that she wants. That's really the engine that drives that character, right? I will do whatever, like you say, to get to the mountaintop of fame, even if
Well, I
it's
Did
think
they
too,
show the
though.
head get run over though? Did they show it get run
yeah,
over and explode really
Yeah,
violently?
yeah.
yeah.
The thing is it happened so early in the film, and then you had that expectation of how the violence was going to be, and it didn't necessarily follow
Yeah, it
that.
don't live up to that. So it kind of peters out early. It's like blow the load at
Pun
the
Balls out.
intended.
It
blow
balls out, not peters out.
it well goes balls out and blows the load early, and then it never reaches that same climax.
Well, she blows her father's head off. It explodes right on screen. I mean,
Well, I guess that's true.
there's a lot of crazy shit in this
There's a lot
movie.
in the
Yeah.
middle though where it's kind of, you know, that we don't show a lot of the kills. We show a lot of the aftermath of the kills, that kind of thing. But then we do end with the big bang with the dad. You're right. I forgot about that. Um, I personally, are we going to rank? Because we've all seen all three of them, right? Are we
Yeah,
going to
we'll
rank
give
them
our
all?
rankings on this one, and
Okay.
then we'll put the trilogy in order
Okay. Well, then I won't bury the
because we
lead
know
with
you're
that
just
then.
dying to know our opinions on that.
Right. Right. That's what they tune in for, the whole trilogy. But personally, for me, I don't think this is the best of the three, but I think for me personally, this is the most rewatchable of the three. And I'll probably revisit this more. I'll get it on Blu-ray. Um, and I think for me, that's mostly because I've watched a lot more of these 80s exploitation type films that this is, and giallos that I think it owes a lot to, the leather gloved faceless killer that you don't reveal till the end, that owes so much to the early giallo and Dario Argento films that I love so much, of which we've talked about a couple of. I like that this is kind of a mishmash of like a 80s street exploitation, kind of similar to Angel, which we did on the podcast with Travis Ayers back in the day, and a giallo. It's kind of that mishmash of those two things, and I just think this movie reeks of 80s-ness, which hits me in the feels. I mean, it all takes place in 1985, which we were all infants in 1985, but we all, I think, have an appreciation and love for 1985. I love, like my heart just went up, skipped a beat or something, like when she's running through the Back to the Future set, which is one of my favorite films of all time. Just like, of all the things you could have done in the Universal backlot in 1985. Yes, hit that one for sure. And the Psycho, I mean, Psycho is one of my all-time favorites. And it's such a great allusion to the character and the character of Pearl and this duality, and also, as I think Helen mentioned, it's in a lot of ways the progenitor of the um, slasher genre. And I mean, without Psycho, there's no Halloween. I think John Carpenter's even said that to some extent. I mean, even Jamie Lee Curtis's mother being the first kill of Psycho. I mean, there's so much connective tissue there that I think this movie's such a loving homage to so many different eras, and I think it is the perfect way to end this kind of weird trilogy where one's not even really totally connected. It's a prequel. I mean, it is kind of hanky the way they did that because of COVID and ended up filming first two back to back, you know. Um, I don't have a whole lot to say other than what John and Kellen have already said, other than I think that the color that I can provide to this is in that third act, since you know we've already spoiled everything at this point, in that third act where you realize that this faceless Giallo beheading killer is actually her dad, which is like a Pentecostal preacher of this weird uh during the satanic, this was right in the middle of the Satanic Panic time of the mid 1980s that was so famous, which I think is also kind of a little bit of a nod to House of the Devil, which was the first film that put Ti West on the map with that satanic group that's featured in that film. I grew up a third generation uh, pastor's kid in the Pentecostal church. So some of the stuff that this guy was preaching on TV reminded me of a lot of like tent revivals and weird things that I had seen and been to, and I didn't think it was. I mean, there's only a couple degrees removed. Some of the cats I know, like a couple life decisions away, they might have been from joining this weird cult that could have, in the mid 80s of the Satanic Panic, could have maybe done some weird decisions and found themselves in some kind of weird group like this and thought they were doing the Lord's work, you know. Um, it is a little over the top and 80s cheese to make that be the thing, but I love the connective tissue because I'm sure when they made X, they had no idea they'd make this film and that they would bring that full circle. So I love kind of, if they did, well, masterful planning and thinking, but I seriously think it was just a happy thing they were able to kind of make happen after the fact. But I love watching them all in sequence as I did leading up to watching this in the theater. I love how they tie that in, and it's almost like they call their shot with the end of um, X with the Maxine character, and it's just a perfect payoff. I think by the end of this film, which is almost why I hope they don't make another one. I will be there. I will watch the next one. I think Mia Goth is an excellent actress. I've seen her compared to Shelley Duvall of The Shining fame and the ingenue that Robert Altman basically gave her career in the 70s. It's sad kind of what happened to her career post The Shining, and RIP with her passing somewhat recently. But I see so many connections between Mia Goth and Shelley Duvall, and I hope she gets her flowers and it while she's still young enough to appreciate it and is able to get some parts outside of the genre. Up to this point, all of her fame has come from within the genre. I hope she's able to break out. Time will tell. I could see it going either way. I think she deserves a chance at some bigger dramatic roles because her character and her acting ability as this character and the Pearl character are what holds this thing together. In the hands of a less capable actress, this trilogy might not work. I could see with the material that this is dealing with and within the porn industry and all this stuff that's intentionally exploitive, this could just be another trashy made for video, you know, slasher ripoff. Um, but in the capable hands of Ti West, good director, Mia Goth really acting her ass off in these movies. I think they pull it off really, really well. What do you think, Jay?
I've not seen a movie with Mia Goth that I didn't like. I think you've probably seen more than you're aware of. Like Infinity Pool, she was fantastic in that. A Cure for Wellness. I don't know if anyone else has seen that movie. It's amazing. She was in Nymphomaniac, Suspiria. She was in Marrowbone, which is another great little indie horror flick. She's in High Life of Robert Pattinson. She's going to be in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. She's going to be in the Blade movie. She's going to play the villain there. So I think we'll get to see her break out. She's going to go into that Marvel world if they can ever lock down a writer. But as far as my opinion on this, so Angel, Body Double, and Blowout. Those are the movies that came to my mind as I was watching this. I know Kellen just went deer in the headlights. Like, what the hell are those movies besides Angel? But Angel was that 80s, Skid Row, Hollywood streets. Like, it just had that same vibe. And I'm sure that's what Ti West was shooting for. I've been a Ti West fan from the get-go. House of the Devil, Innkeepers. I love the Innkeepers. I can't explain to you why I love that movie, because a lot of people say it's boring, and it is.
The ending is great, though.
The ending is amazing. But
It's
you
just
have
slow
to
burn.
get there. Yeah.
It's slow burn.
Sarah, whatever her name is, she's great. And but I really love that movie. So when I saw X in theaters, and then we got that preview for Pearl, and then I'm like, holy shit, we've gotten like 3 movies from Ti West in the last 10, 15 years, and now we're getting 2 in the same calendar year. Like, I was so excited. X was amazing. Pearl was amazing. This one, no one else is shit on it. Somebody's got to, right? It's not going to be me. I didn't hate it. I also didn't love it. Middle of the road for me. And what we discussed earlier is that third act just kind of fell flat for me. I guess when you watched the previews, you had the red herrings of the Night Stalker killing people. So I was kind of hoping he would go that route, and kind of like Tarantino did with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where you just kind of change history a little bit. So it's actually her up against the Night Stalker. Like, I would have enjoyed that a lot more. But at the same time, we still had to come back around to her dad. We had to some degree. The only reason we wouldn't is like we see it in X. I'm like, okay, her dad was an evangelist preacher. That's why that's why she's doing porn and kind of has a few screws loose. Like, she was just rebelling from that. So they could have gone that route, I think. Also, I was talking to Nash today, which we had on episode for that movie John hates. I can't even think of the name of it now. Joe Bob just did it.
Deadly Games?
Death Game.
Death
Death
Game.
Game. Yeah.
I was talking to him earlier, and we talked about this because he has already seen it as well. And I said, it didn't feel as indie. And that's kind of what we associate Ti West with, is those kind of indie, I hate the term elevated horror, but to a degree it is. This one had a bigger budget. It had bigger stars. And that was almost a turnoff for me to a degree, because you see these others, especially Pearl. There's nobody in Pearl, right? 10 people. In X, you had Jenna Ortega, but she hadn't blown up yet. Brittany Snow, who we know from a few things, but she's not huge. Kid Cudi was only huge in music. So you had all these people you didn't really know yet, and it just felt different. Pearl the same way. So this one, you say, okay, Bobby Cavanaugh, whatever his name is, Giancarlo Esposito, okay, Kevin Bacon. Like, you're excited because you love these people, you like these people, but at the same time, it feels like you're getting away from that formula you had. But it's a contradiction, because at the same time, you kind of have to, and you kind of have to evolve. And it's just that natural progression when you came out with these, I would call them sleeper hits for the most part for Ti West, because they're A24, but so it went along with that natural progression, which it should have had. I'm fine if they make another one. And really, they could even make more Pearl spinoffs, because was in X, there was another car in the lake. Whose car was that? So they can make other Pearl movies if they wanted to, and that's a big span from Pearl to X, like that age. So they can make more spinoffs. I would watch those too. The casting was amazing, which we already know that. All the homages and everything with Psycho, Angel, just that 80s lifestyle. Like you, TJ, like, I gravitate to the 80s. We were born in 84, except one of us, right?
Yep.
He's older. He's an old man, but
Thanks. I appreciate that. Thanks for pointing out.
I didn't even say it was
Mr.
you.
83.
Mr. 41 in 5 days.
Oh, my condolences.
Womp womp. What you'll be celebrating with Creed though, so it'll be fine. Why'd I go that way? Now you took me off what I was talking about. But if they make others, I'm here for it. I think also, I think Ti West kind of wanted to go that direction. Like, I think he kind of wanted to go up because I don't know what the box office was for X and Pearl, but Pearl changed everything. Like, I see, people on Instagram and Facebook constantly posting, Pearl's their spirit animal. And I associate with Pearl, and that's kind of scary, but she resonated with a giant audience. So if I was Ti West, I would totally take advantage of that too. I'm like, hey, let's go bigger. Let's go stronger. Let's go Kevin fucking Bacon. And it does work. But again, the 80s, why I gravitate to it, I'm not sure, because it was shinier. It was brighter. It was more over the top. Like, you look at the movies we got in the 80s compared to what we're getting now, and it's just black and white. We had Ghoulies compared to Terrifier. Like, it's just a different animal. And all my favorite horror movies, besides, classic Halloween, all my favorites really are in between 80 and 89. Like, there's just so many great films that we got. So I do appreciate that direction. I got the Giallo feels too. Black gloves, I think he wore. Just another, tip of the hat to a genre that Ti West probably loves. But yeah, again, that third act, I don't know why. Again, disappointment maybe from not being the Night Stalker, but they did have to go back to the dad. The shotguns was a little silly. I had kind of forgotten that part. They're like, surprise, motherfucker. And then they all just have shotguns. Like, they planned ahead. The cut at the back of the neck, like the ball stomp was the worst. I think that's like Kellen has a thing for eyes getting poked and prodded, and that the nut shot did it for me. But that cut on the back of the neck did hurt. Like, I'm sure when we were all watching, we all kind of like, lean forward and grab the back of our neck, because that is not something we see. I don't know if I'm sure I've seen it at some point, but not like that where it resonated and it stuck with you. So, was Kevin Bacon's accent good or bad? I'm not.
It was glorious. It was glorious.
It was fantastic.
It was over the top and glorious. And he's, other than Mia Goth, he's the best thing about the movie. To me,
So?
I love.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Character.
Oh, he's pretty good. That New Orleans thing was funny, I thought.
Yeah, I'm just someone who wears.
I'm about to make a name for myself. Yeah,
someone that wears hearing aids. When I hear accents, sometimes I can't necessarily tell if it's good or bad. But other than that, I think that's all my notes. So let's go around, give our rankings, and then we'll also, after that, we'll go and list the trilogy in order how we think they rank. For me, I went back and forth between a 3 and a 3.5. While Kellen has the title of being the dick of the show recently, the hater, the shitter, I'm more the positive guy. So I stuck with 3.5. It is probably the most rewatchable. Like you said, TJ, I think so. But yeah, I'll stick with a 3.5. John?
Yeah, one thing I wasn't clear about when I watched it, and I think I know now, but the followers of her dad, were they insinuating that those were families of Night Stalker victims or families of porn actresses and porn actors?
it kind of felt like I felt like it was going to be like the people that he was killing, like they were starting to follow him, like he was recruiting them after killing their loved ones or whatever, but they never really said. But it insinuated one or the other. They were definitely families of murder victims.
I thought it was the victims' families was my thought.
Yeah, it may be, and that could have been it. I love this movie. I would definitely watch Puritan 1 and 2 if they ever released that. I would watch them. I understand what you guys mean. I understand what you mean about the indie thing, Jay. Kellen, I can kind of understand. I understand what you're saying about like the shock. I think it was homage exploitation, but I also understand, it's kind of out of nowhere in some spots.
I just think it's been overdone for me.
Yeah,
it's because it was the balls too, and it's not something we've seen since Street Trash that you don't see very often.
Right.
So that was part of it too. It's just, I don't know, it came off a little off-putting, but again, because we didn't really get another kill until, like you said, the end. Mm-hmm. But had she, I don't know, stomped on his face with their heels and gouged his eye out, it probably would have hit a little differently.
Yeah.
It's just because it was the balls. But the funniest part is like she calls him Buster. He's dressed as Buster Keaton. Like I enjoy that.
And but yeah, that is pretty.
It's kind of like you saw Buster Keaton's balls.
Bust his balls.
Ah,
Yeah, I like the fact that it was Hollywood. I was so impressed by how well this movie looked. I felt like Ti West moved into a new stratosphere. Like, it's not that I don't like indie. I really love well-made, big-budget Hollywood films, and this felt like his first real Hollywood film. Yeah, for me, I'm partial, but it's honestly a 4 out of 5. I really, really, really love it. As far as the rankings of the series, X, I bet like a 3 out of 5.
We weren't doing that yet. We were gonna do this.
Oh, we're not. Oh,
yeah. So
okay.
just slow your fucking roll.
I'm gonna slow my
Let's hear
roll.
what Kelly
Catch,
gave
John.
Maxine.
we're doing 2 cycles, John. 2 cycles.
I thought we were doing both in one. Sorry.
All right.
What was
Kellen.
Jay's ranking for X and Pearl? Oh wait, he didn't say it yet, John. Keep up.
Hey, I've seen Dawn of the Dead at least. Come on now.
Sheesh. I don't know. I don't know what to rate this. Did I like it? Kind of. Do I not like it? Kind of. I'm like in between. Like, I think you take Kevin Bacon and Mia Goth out of this movie and it's trash, honestly. I mean, I think it's not anything special. I think that she brings a certain enjoyment to it. Kevin Bacon brings a certain enjoyment to it. Giancarlo Esposito, those characters make the movie good. The story was kind of bland. So like I said, it underwhelmed in certain parts. So, I mean, I guess just because the Kevin Bacon redeemed it, Mia Goth being great redeemed it, and Giancarlo Stanton, I'll give it a 3.
I think too, they probably tied their hands a little bit with the ending of X, where they're like, they probably had it all ready. Like, here's the story we're going to tell. So they couldn't really go off course on that. It might have tied their hands a little bit, making the story a little bit more excitable, enjoyable. I don't know. All right, TJ.
Yeah, I do think like what you said about the Night Stalker. If it had actually been the Night Stalker, it would have been maybe a little more engaging. But it wouldn't
because
have...
has everybody else seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah.
So what's the best part of that movie?
The ending.
Last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Man, for sure.
Where Brad Pitt,
which is
goes
also
nuts.
the best part of Inglourious Bastards, where they get to kill Hitler.
Yeah,
right?
but my point there is they went off script, and that movie, historically accurate, whatever. It was the same story until like that last 15 minutes. Besides who was living in the house, like had they changed this a little bit, I think I don't know. I like is a bad word, but
like alternative history.
The Night Stalker is one of the most fascinating serial killers that have been out there. So like I was already kind of attracted to that story, so I would have liked it had gone in that direction. And again, that's probably part of the disappointment, is because that's what I had in my head. Like, this is what's going on, this is what's happening, and it didn't necessarily turn out to be that. So that that took it a half down, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I was like semi disappointed that they didn't go that route, but then I felt like overall, as an overall story they're telling throughout all of these movies, that tying the piece with the dad, the preacher, it made more sense. So I appreciated that. I think this movie's a 4 for me. I do think it's the most.
Hold on. You can rot straight in hell. I'm sorry. You give this a 4 and you gave Deadpool Wolverine a 3.5.
That one's growing on me. The more
I'm out. Bye guys. See you later.
The more clips I'm watching, especially the bye 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 dance, I'm getting towards a 4 on that one. I'll probably eventually land at a 4 on Wolverine and Deadpool.
Here's what's funny is Kellen's repulsed by that, but he also liked X better than Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So
that's true, which is
in the same boat, and it's
a damnable offense in some circles.
Right, that puts us at 3.6. We'll call it a 4. So now we just go around. We'll give our just order 1, 2, and 3 out of the trilogy. Which one do you like most, at least? X is 1 for me. I think Pearl's 1B, honestly, because X is an overall better movie. I think it's more enjoyable, whereas Pearl, the acting is just so sensational, and there's really not a lot that's going on besides just her acting and being wild. So I love them both almost equally, but gun to head, X would be number 1, in the order of release. So X, Pearl, and then Maxine. So John, you can go now.
Sorry. Yeah, I go reverse probably. Pearl and Maxine are like neck and neck, but I would say Maxine, then Pearl, then X. But even saying that, X is a really good movie. It's like that's not a derogative to X. So
that's fair. You know, one of my favorite. I rewatched X this week as well, and Pearl, but one of my favorite shots from that is the helicopter shot when Mia Goth gets in the lake. First of all, who the hell gets in lakes? I guess it was the 70s, so it was a different time. You get into a nasty ass lake, you don't know what's in there, and this just happened to have an alligator crocodile in it. That's one of my favorite scenes, is where she's swimming back to the dock, and that, you know, he's slowly going after
right
her. Like,
behind
okay,
her.
is he gonna get there? Like, very suspenseful, like very Jaws-esque. Like, I love that scene.
Well, for me, I guess since I've already spoiled it by saying I liked it better than Texas Chainsaw Massacre, X is number one for me. Maxine would be 2, and then Pearl, gross. I would have gave that a 2-star. Pearl is last for me.
what?
Nothing happens in that movie except Mia Goth
My
acting.
favorite part is your laugh trailing off, John. Like, what?
Nothing happens in that movie except Mia Goth acting her ass off. I mean, Castaway was a boring movie if you take Tom Hanks out of it. I mean, that was literally Tom Hanks on a beach going, "I'm on fire," and I love Tom Hanks. I think he's amazing. But boy, that first 45 minutes of that movie really is really a stinker. And it's just because there's nothing going on. There's nothing to keep your attention. Same thing with Pearl. God, Mia Goth, congratulations, you did a one-man play for an hour of a movie. You did fantastic. What else happened? Nothing. Blah.
Well, Kellen's gonna hate my take.
Oh man.
Get ready, guys, ladies and gentlemen. So for me, Pearl is the masterpiece of this trilogy. Pearl is a 4.5. I think Maxine's a 4. And X is like a strong 3.5 for me. I will probably rewatch Maxine more than all of them, but they're all good. They're all solid. But I think Pearl, she acts her pants off in that. I mean, literally in some instances, but I mean, it is a tour de force of acting, especially that final scene where they just hold on her, trying to smile through the tears throughout the whole credit scene. It's so creepy and so weird the way they do it, but it does something that no other film has done. Who else is doing like a weird horror version of The Wizard of Oz set in like the early stag film porn industry and makes it a horror
Wizard of
film?
Oz at least had things happening throughout the movie. She met the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, and
She
had
met
the
a
witch hunting her and
scarecrow
stuff
and
like
had
that.
had an intimate relationship with him.
Oh my god. Ugh. That's
I
how
agree,
forgettable
though.
that
I
movie
do
was. I
agree
even
on
forgot
Pearl.
that happened.
I do agree on Pearl. I while nothing necessarily happens, just the acting alone puts it up there for me. Even like, I was up at my mom's cabin and I was going to make them watch Late Night with the Devil, but I wasn't able to get it up, so we ended up watching Pearl. And my mom hates horror, Lindsay hates horror. Neither one of them hate that movie. It's a good gateway horror movie because there's really not a ton that happens. But again, acting class for me, that whole one, the whole scarecrow thing, and then just her going nuts like, "I'm married," like that scene alone makes that movie great.
That's one of the best female performances I've seen in the last 10
When
years.
she
in that
when
movie.
she turns on that guy in the barn and she's like calm to mean, that's brilliant to me. Just how she turns like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you said Pearl's number one. I missed your number one. Yeah. Different strokes, right? But overall, great trilogy. Whatever else Ti West wants to do, I'm here for it. So with that, we'll close up shop. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to wherever you're listening to this podcast. Follow us on Instagram. Join our Facebook group. And TikTok, we're on there. And since this episode comes out about a month before, September 27th, I got back into the booking music game to help Ari Lehman, the first Jason, and his band come back to town. So we would love to see you there. He will be playing with other guests that we've had on this show. Funny enough, I tried to make that work out. The Nearly Deads, which we've had Steven and TJ on, the lady TJ, and Magdalene Rose will be opening up that show, who we had on for our Quiet Place episode. So it's going to be a good night. Come get you some free stickers. Come meet a horror legend, and come listen to some good music.
And we'll all be there. I'm getting off work.
If someone doesn't show up, they are fired from this show. So if you're
fun,
looking to
guys.
hop on a podcast, we'll let you know after September 27th. So signing off, I'm Jay with John, Kellen, and TJ. And until next time,
Keep it spooky.
and do not accept a life you do not deserve.
Exactly. And as my t-shirt says that nobody can read, believe in yourself, even if no one else will, as the Sasquatch likes to say.
I say just like Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You know, Kellen, I can't believe you fucking seen I Spit on Your Grave 3.
That is
So how-
ludicrous.
I was too hot to argue earlier today.
That
when you
is
told me
like
this. It was too
literally
hot.
ludicrous.
How did you see it? Explain this scenario where you're at home or somewhere and you watch I Spit on Your Grave 3.
Because
You're
that's
like, I
not
want
an easy
something
movie.
light and fun to watch.
So the job I used to have was at a group home for special needs people, and we got to watch TV and movies during the shift. And one of the guys I worked with put it on, and I just watched it. So this was not. Don't think this was like a conscious decision where I was like, you know what, I want to watch the third movie in a series of films that I have no idea what any of it's about. It was
is
literally
all
just
based
we're gonna
on
watch I Spit on Your Grave 3.
rape
I was like,
revenge.
oh, okay, we're doing that. Okay.
Yeah, but you watched it. You weren't on your phone.
So, true. So
what a strange movie to watch in that location too.
And this will tell you, this will tell you how. Oh, so there was a great story from there. So there was a guy that used to be one of the patients there, and he used to watch old porn VHS tapes. He had a VHS player in there, and he'd pop his old porn like that
DJ.
old kind of. and he was in there watching one hardcore porn, and this lady who used to work there, she's like 60-year-old woman. She's uber Shiite Christian woman, very religious. She comes in and she's like, oh, what's so-and-so in there watching? And Tom, the guy I was working with that made me watch I Spit on Your Grave 3, was like, oh, the 10 Commandments. And she's like, oh, I love the 10 Commandments. And she goes in there, and 5 seconds later she goes, that's not the 10 Commandments.
They could have been saying, oh God, when she walked in. Talking about 70s porn music, that was something else I loved about X, was the porn music that they had.
You know, that's what the NWO theme song was.
Basically, yeah.
It was literally taken from old porn.
That dude is Dime Store Matthew McConaughey. I don't like that. I don't like that guy.
Yeah.
The guy from The Ring who was like the dude next. Yeah.
And Torque. He was in Torque.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I was going to say about that other job, that watching the stuff there. Do you know the movie The Gift with Jason Bateman?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that movie spoiled for me while I was working there, and I don't. If we do an episode on that,
Don't spoil the ending. I've never watched it, but I own it.
I never will. Just so you know, if we ever do an episode on The Gift, I will not be here for that one, because this is how petty I am. When he spoiled it for me right before we were supposed to watch it, I walked out of the room and went to my office and did work instead of watching a movie, because that's how violently angry I get at people spoiling something
before you were about to watch it. That's dumb.
he spoiled it right before we were about to watch it.
Well, it's not it's more.
So I told him, I said, I will never watch this movie. And he's like, oh, come on, it's not. He said it's a good watch. And I was like, oh, I don't care. I will go to my grave never having watched this. Even if Jason Bateman had cancer, and the cure to his cancer was me watching The Gift, we're all going to have to listen to Sarah McLachlan video and watch clips of Jason Bateman being awesome in Arrested Development and other movies, because I am not watching that movie.
That's just blasphemy.
Never.
Well,
I'll never watch The Gift.
I have
like
to
I said,
admire your
next episode
strange
recorded.
conviction.
TJ, you won't like it.
I won't like it.
It's really shocking.
It's uncomfortable. The acting's great between him and I always forget the other dude's name, but he's always good in everything I've ever seen him to.
The only other time that happened was the movie Gone Girl.
I do own it, so at some point I'll probably watch it.
One of the patients went to Walmart to do his personal shopping, and I sent some money with the staff member there. I was like, pick up Gone Girl. I had made it all the way through the theatrical release. This was back before COVID, so when there was that 3-month gap between the end of the theatrical release and the release of the DVD Blu-ray, So I had made it all the way to that point without any spoilers in the movie Gone Girl. Spoilers if you haven't watched it, because what she told me was the biggest spoiler. As soon as I had it in my hand, I was at the Blu-ray player, put the movie in, stepped back, and what are y'all watching? Gone Girl. She's like, so I wonder if he did anything to her after the ending. And I was like, Eleanor. And she was like, what? That didn't ruin anything. I was like, bitch, I know she's not dead. The whole premise of the movie is whether or not she's dead.
Well, it's not called Dead Girl.
Well, it's Gone Girl, but the whole premise of the movie is like, did he kill her? Is she actually dead? Well, now I know that she makes it to the very end of the film. So the first 20 minutes when it's building up to her.
Oh, wasn't it based on
the Gone Girl
story that happened though?
I have no idea. I was so livid with her after that.
I think it was based on a real story.
It may have been, but it was. I watched that movie with the biggest anger face you could possibly. I was surprised you still watched. I was so mad.
I had the same issue with the last James Bond movie. Like this guy.
Hey, that movie had been out for months.
Oh no! What is it called? No Time
Everybody
to Die.
Yeah.
No,
spoilers. Yeah. He dies.
Yeah.
That was
the worst for me.
It's the worst James
Not
Bond
by Kellen,
movie
but by
ever
somebody
made.
else. The internet.
It was the worst James Bond movie ever made.
I refuse to watch that movie.
That movie is a 5-star
Quicksilver.
action film. It is a 1-star James Bond movie.
Damn. I've seen some of it, but I haven't seen all of it.
It's fantastic, other than the fact that you killed the one person you can't kill. He's supposed to always overcome. He's like Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible. He's supposed to find a way to win.
Let's go ahead and talk about Deadpool and Wolverine since John hasn't seen it yet.
No, I won't. I don't want to ruin that.
Hey,
It is
look,
so good.
I already know the main points because of YouTube.
It's really fun. I love Gambit in that movie.
No,
You don't like it?
glad that there wasn't one. Spoilers. I'm glad. Like I know he wouldn't have played it that way in the real movie, but seeing it, hearing it, I'm like, I'm not here for it.
Really?
Like
I mean, it's over the top.
The dude who played him in the Wolverine movie, I'd rather him do it. The guy from Friday Night Lights.
He was good.
Taylor
It didn't bother me.
something.
It felt like it was just like, for me, it made sense. John, earmuffs.
I don't want to ruin anything for John. Don't give
it
it.
just made sense. It made sense in the situation they were in. That's the Gambit we got.
Yeah. It's like the 90s cartoon show over the top Gambit a little bit. Yeah.
Speaking of X Factors,
I do wish
X-Men. That's okay.
I do wish a particular character showed up that didn't, but
Winnie the Pooh.
Yes.
That's the different universe. That's
And
the
Piglet,
Pooniverse.
too.
Yeah, I wish.
Right.
I don't know. Like I didn't like Deadpool 2 as much as 1, but I just rewatched it again. I think it's still good. I felt one is like
first one.
One is like, God, that's such a good movie. Like it's just so it works on so many levels, you know. The second one is more just like a parody of the genre, I guess you could say. But
it really makes you think, what were they thinking in that first Wolverine movie? Was what they did with the same actor as Deadpool.
Well, Sony has no business doing any comic book movies. That's what we've learned.
No.
And thankfully they're done after this nasty ass Venom one. That trailer looks.
What should we do with a character whose nickname is the Merc with the mouth? Oh, I know. Remove his mouth.
Right.
Dumb idiot. Who thought that would be? Let's make it look like he's been mutilated by.
Well, they weren't
surgery
trying to
have the
glorify him. They weren't trying to glorify him, so they were taking away what they hated most about him, which was him running his mouth.
Which is the only thing that makes that character.
Yeah, that was such a
and then
weird
he got everybody's
choice.
powers. He could have Cyclops' eyes and shit. So
it was so dumb. It was so dumb.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go eat.
All right.
All right.
See
Bye.
you
I'm gonna
guys.
go watch I Spit on Your Grave 4.
Is there a 4?
There's a remake.
There's several, I think.
Yeah.
Well, there's like several remakes. They're trilogies.
Deja
I think
Vu is horrible. It looks so bad. Yeah.
And
Don't
I'm
watch
gonna go. I'm gonna go not watch any of the Dead movies.
You make me cry.
Damn
Cry
it.
tears.
You sound like my mom.
Sound like everybody in his life. And mine.
Happy 41st.
Bye.